What's up, folks? Anthony Armstrong here, former NFL receiver and host of Believe in Commanders. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. It's a league specifically created for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or league. Now, if you need help making those selections, you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Now, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on daily fantasy sports. You pick 2 or more players, choose more or less in whatever statistical category, and then you rack in the winnings up to 25x on your cash on your DFS picks. Make your way over to prizepicks.com/believe and use the code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a first deposit match up to $100. You must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Let's be real. Dealing with tangled cords can make it harder to do your hair. Break free with the new Unbound Cordless Auto Curler from Conair. Get the curls and waves you want, anytime, anywhere. It's designed to let you experience the power and freedom of beauty in motion. No cords to hold you back. You get your curls and waves your way. Unplug and be unbound. Loose curls, tight curls, beachy waves. The Unbound Cordless Auto Curler makes it easy to get the looks you love. Love your look. Live unbound. Available at Conair.com and search Unbound.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt, als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn. Joining me, as always, is Chris Williams. Chris, how's your week been?
Well, it's been 2 weeks, Bryce, because I wasn't here last week. I've had no internet, so it's been a bit bad. So, I've had to speak to my family, go out and do things. So, the reason I couldn't be here last week is because I was moving house and I had no internet and it's still not on. So, I'm in work at the moment. It's, 10 past 10, Monday night in the UK. So, it's been a long week. I think it'll be an even longer week this week as well. But apart from that, I'm fine.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, we've all been through that nightmare of switching over, haven't we? But joining Chris and I is Manu Veth. Manu, how have you been?
Yeah, we just talked about 5 minutes ago on the
for well over an hour
recording Golazzo on a new schedule, of course. But yeah, I'm good. It's I'm excited. We have some really interesting topics. We had some news drop on us just I guess an hour or so ago, so something to discuss, and I get to discuss a little bit of 1860 today, so I'm excited about that as well.
Yes, most certainly. And let's start off with 1860. Let's move right in there. I have a feeling that Chris and I won't have much to say about this. So the floor is yours, Manu. I believe that 1860 were playing Bayern's second side. Well, go ahead. Tell us how that went and how 1860 are actually getting on this season. We know that last year they were in the second division and the second tier in Germany, but after financial issues, they got dropped down somewhat further into the fourth tier, didn't they?
Yeah, I guess the last time we spoke about 1860, things were really dire, and I think the best way to describe it is renaissance when it comes to what has been going on. Of course, talk about the derby, the Stadtderby, as Chris rightfully put it on the tweet in a moment, and that result wasn't great for 1860. But they're first in that division. They're 6 points ahead of second placed Ingolstadt 2, so Ingolstadt's reserve side, who have no aspirations whatsoever to go up. So that's looking really good. They're 16 points ahead of Bayern's second side, who are a team that wants to go up because Bayern are massively restructuring their youth setup. And they're, I think 12 or 15 points ahead of Schweinfurt, who they are one of the other favorites, to go up from this Regionalliga Bayern to the third division, which is of course where 1860 want to get to as quickly as possible because of that bottleneck, right? You have to play, you have to not only win your league to go up, but you also have to then win a playoff against one of the teams of the other five Regionalligas, that determine, Regionalligas, Südwest, which because it's the largest by population, has the first to make the playoffs, which then gets us to 6 playoff spots altogether. That determines 3 promotion teams. So in the league, it's going very well. They have lost only 3 games, tied 1 and won the entire rest of them. They're playing in the Grünwalder Stadion, which is the home of the team in Giesing, which is probably the reason for the renaissance. They're averaging, every game is sold out pretty much. You have to be a member or a season ticket holder to get tickets for 1860 these days. I've mentioned to you on the WhatsApp chat that the cheapest ticket is actually cheap. It's actually more expensive than Bayern's cheapest ticket at the moment because of supply and demand. So in that regard, things have gone really well. They have negotiated a single television deal for this division. They can because they're no longer part of the DFL, which gives them actually more television money than they get in the upper divisions, which is crazy. I heard somewhere that the TV number for this game on the weekend was 250,000 viewers, which is solid. It's very good. And so things have been going very well, in the Regionalliga, and it has sort of allowed them to, get away from the Allianz Arena and trying to be an FC Bayern München light towards recreating their own identity and like refining and uncovering their like kind of working class identity that they had for so many years. And it's sort of, that's why I'm saying renaissance. Of course, I think in order for that to work long term, they need promotion. They need to get out of this league as quickly as possible. Liga 3 third division would be a good home for them to continue this restructuring going forward, to find a solution for the stadium, for example, because they cannot play in the second division in the way the Grünwald Stadion is right now. They need to find a solution. So, I think Liga 3 would be a good place to continue that. So they need to get out. But, about this game, of course, this was the first time 1860's first side played any Bayern team since 2008, where they were eliminated in the quarterfinal by Bayern. On a questionable Toni Kroos penalty. Ribéry dived in the box. I remember this game well. And you will say, no, you're an 1860 fan. That's why you're saying dive. Go back, watch the replays. It was a dive. There was no penalty. That was the last encounter between the two sides, and we hadn't had a real Munich derby since. And so there was a lot of talk about, was this an actual Munich derby now on the weekend? Was it not? Well, I tell you, the way both sides took it, was there was a substantial amount of Bayern fans, 1,200 Bayern fans in the stadium, made a lot of noise, nice choreography by them as well, so kudos to them. And Bayern's reserve side won this game 1-0, sadly. Deservedly, I thought. They were better on that particular match day. And, there was a real buzz around this game, and it shows you that there is a real sense or a real nostalgia to the good old days of the 1990s and 2000s, when this was a real derby between the two big sides. 1860 used to be a big side in German football. Still are when you just take the fans into account. So I think taking what I took away from this game in particular is the fact that I want the real derby very soon, possibly soon, at least in my lifetime. And I think there's a good chance of that, but it gave a real sense of nostalgia for sure.
Well, Manu, you've talked about you and Chris, and hopefully myself, you will be over in Germany in the next few months, but you certainly will be. You've booked your flights and everything, but are you planning to see some 1860 games while you're there, and will you be doing any reporting on behalf of Football Grand?
Yeah, we are. Monday, November 20th, I think is the date. That's the first game I'm going to see. And then, of course, this is actually a game I'm taking my old man to. He's an 1860 fan as well. So I'm excited because it's been over 20 years that we have been together at the Grünwalder Stadion in a game. So I'm really excited to take him. And then, so I'm going as a fan, not as a reporter. I am going to report off the experience, but I am going first and foremost as a fan. But then there's a game, I think, a week after that, that's also a home game, at the Grünwalder, and we're gonna make sure we get accreditation for that one and cover that game as well.
Very good. And as exciting as all that is, I think it's about time we bring Chris Williams into the mix and we talk about, we'll talk about the Bundesliga, I think, to be fair. No disrespect, Manu, but I think most of the listeners will be tuning in to hear that. So, yes, let's go up to the top flights. And a bit of big news today, which we'll go straight to Chris to talk about, was coming out of Cologne. No, they haven't sacked Peter Stöger, which some people were talking that might be the case pretty soon after another loss. It's actually Jörg Schmadtke who's left them, the sporting director. Some people would know him for his playing career as a goalkeeper with Fortuna Düsseldorf, and I believe he was at Leverkusen but didn't play at Freiburg. Sorry about that. He's left. Chris, do you think this means that possibly Stöger will get buy him more time?
It may do. I mean, if you read around what's been said in Germany this afternoon, he's said to have left because he'd expressed dissatisfaction over the direction the club has taken. So maybe the direction the club is taking is keeping Stöger, and he wasn't happy about that, and maybe he was told, he's not going, and therefore he's left. You would argue that normally it's a good indication that a coach is staying if the sporting director or one of the management side goes before the coach. You'd argue that the coach would stay. I think we saw last season, especially at Dortmund, there was a lot of disagreement around, and it was Thomas Tuchel who bit the bullet. I would have expected Stöger to go the same way, but he's managed to stay. And we've said a couple of times on this podcast, and I think we said it 2 weeks ago, that maybe, just maybe, this is what Cologne need. The last thing they need is a change of personnel when they're still deep rooted in the brown sticky stuff as they are at the moment. It might just be a little too early to change the manager, because if they change the head coach right now, and it doesn't have the required lift, where do they go from there? So with Schmadtke having his contract terminated, I think this may have just bought Stöger a few more weeks, maybe until the end of the first part of the season. So I'd expect if Cologne is still deep-rooted to the bottom of the table as we enter the Christmas break, he will go very quickly. But who's going to come in? That's a question. There's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days on who could come in, hasn't there, Bryce? So, there's one particular person, and that is Schalke's ex-head coach, who had very similar problems this time last season. So I don't know if he would be the right answer.
No, that's it. I mean, maybe not an ideal man to get in. Manu, do you think it's that possibly this departure is due to your transfers in the summer? I mean, we've talked about Cordoba having potential to be a very good player, but he was never going to be an out-and-out goal scorer, never has been. And, obviously with Modeska leaving, there's still that big hole in the side. And do you think that maybe just the players that he brought in weren't good enough, and it's left Stöger and the rest of the team, in this position?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, Bryce. I'm just reading into all in the news that are coming out, but Schmadtke is a hothead a little bit. He is the kind of guy who will say, well, if we don't do it a certain way, then I will just like throw the towel and leave. And I guess maybe they said, okay, well, that's it. You're done. But maybe to answer your question, I think the big issue has been really that that Schmadtke hasn't landed any of the transfers, the transfer targets that they needed, right? And that they sold Anthony Monteste in the summer and didn't really bring in a replacement. John Cordoba is I still think he's a good signing, but he is the sort of player who was very different. I think he would have worked well in concert with Modeste, but not as an individual. And then you see a long list of players that Schmadtke targeted and couldn't sign. And I think that is really an issue. But at the same time, I'm not sure whether, and I think, Chris, we talked about this, is the kind of earthquake that the club doesn't need at the moment. Is this a good decision to let someone go at this situation? Because it's not like a new sporting director can do anything right now. I mean, yes, they sign a new sporting director, but what's going to happen? It's not like they can make any transfers. They can't sign anyone. So I think that the timing of it is a little odd. I think it was clear that something was going to happen. I personally thought maybe they're going to replace Stöger for another coach, and that still could happen. The obvious one would have been that Stöger would take the position of the Austrian national team, which would have been an easy out, right? And rather than being straight up fired, send him on to promote him to let him go to a better position, or what seemed as a better position, and allow the team to have a new impulse. And this would have been a good way to do it without a major earthquake, without shaking the foundation too much. But I don't know. Schmatke, the way seems to be separated, and I hear two different stories coming out of Köln too. The one story is that he defended Stöger till the end, and that there was a disagreement of how to go forward, and that's why he was let go. But the other one is that Stöger and Schmatke disagreed over transfers. So I guess this could be potentially really bad news for Stöger, or it could be potentially a way to strengthen Stöger going forward.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see how the next few weeks pan out and whether fortunes can change there. Manu, you spoke about the game on Friday as they took on. You've expressed a few times actually that you don't think that the Werder Bremen team are coached by the right man either. And how did this game go down?
Ooh. What did Konstantin say? Not against Elend. Such a hard one to translate. Poor against worse. I guess anyone has seen Goyassi's missed chance by now. I think that's really brings us down to where Schmatke maybe made his biggest mistake in the summer. And I mean, Chris, this is something we talked to many times. He didn't manage to sign a replacement for Modeste. And Goyassi was one of those guys that they internally labeled as a potential replacement for Modeste, someone who they already had and didn't play very much because of injuries last season. But he missed a chance from 5 meters out. Go watch the replay, but he basically just needs to tap it in, and he doesn't put it over the net, or he's on the right side of the net, doesn't put it on the right side of the net, but he actually manages to put it over on the left side. This is hard to describe. Watch it. You'll see what I mean. It's basically, it was harder to miss it that way than to put it over the line. And I think that's really where it comes down to, right? Is that they did not sign another Modeste this summer. And that is, in Germany, that is the job of the sporting director.
Yeah, I think it's actually come down to, Chris, you mentioned a few weeks ago that all of a sudden it can become 10 games and Cologne still won't have picked up a victory. They're sat on 2 points only after that draw to Werder Bremen, who are second from bottom. I personally agree with you, Chris, and think that the next game against Bayer Leverkusen away from home this coming weekend, I think that's do or die. I think if fortunes don't change now, it may just be a little too late. Chris, would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, for me, that's the magic figure, 10 games in. And if they come out of next weekend, played 10, let's say, for instance, they get beat 2-0, they'll have played 10, they'll be on a negative goal difference of 16, which is massive. We saw how tight the table was last season, both top and bottom, and competition for European places and relegation playoff places. It can come down to, goal difference. And that is, well, if you're going to be down 16 points, if you're going to be on a minus of, let's say, 16 after 10 games and 2 points, it's a lot. It's now getting a real big gap to 15th, which is, safety in essence. And they're looking that they're going to have to go on maybe three games unbeaten run, but not unbeaten. It'll be 3 winning runs. And then they're having to hope that Werder Bremen, Hamburg, Freiburg, Wolfsburg, Stuttgart all drop points. So all of a sudden it's early November when they play again almost, and yeah, it's a dire situation because we've only got 4 weeks or maybe 4 or 5 weeks until we break for Christmas, and if they're rock solid to the bottom of the table when we come out of the winter break, there's a lot of pressure on there, and I don't know if they have the mental capacity at the moment. Watching them play lately, both in Europe and the Bundesliga, I don't think they've got the mental capacity to drag themselves out. So I'm pretty much with you, Bryce. I think if they come out of the 10th game with no victory, I think it's looking really, really bad for them, and we could know who the first casualty this season will be.
Yeah, may I just say that the 11th game is against Hoffenheim as well. So it just heightens the importance of winning that Leverkusen game as well. Manu, talking about Werder Bremen as well, I mean, they're down there as well in 17th. They've failed to pick up a victory this season. They've obviously got 5 points instead of 2 compared to Cologne, but things are looking as grim as ever for them. Do you see if another week goes by and neither of these teams pick up victories, that's just like Chris and I said about Cologne, that it may be both teams are actually going to be casualties to relegation.
Yeah, I think there's a very different situation in Bremen than in Köln. I think in Köln they have understood how bad the situation is, and in Bremen they are sitting, Konstantin and I talked about this last week. Bremen has always hired within. There's a saying, the Werder-Familie in Bremen. It's a bit like the mafia. They only hire people that are part of the family, and Nuri is part of that family, but it means there's very little impulses from outside, which has hurt the club really since the mid-2000s, where they had their heyday, the last heyday, and I think that the way Bremen run as a club, they are almost so self-congratulatory about Nuri and the management, Baumann and Bode, who are part of this Werder family. They don't really see how dire the situation is, and because they don't have anyone from outside come in. Clubs are like companies. Every once in a while you need an impulse from outside to sort of just give yourself a reality check. And Bremen, you really hadn't had that in a long time. And it manifests itself with the situation with Nuri. I think that Nuri is one of the most overrated coaches in the Bundesliga. I personally don't think he's a Bundesliga coach. I don't think he has the level, and it's showing in this season. And for some odd reason, the people that are working with him, the sporting director and the CEO, so that would be Bode and Baumann, they don't seem to get that. They don't seem to see it, whereas everyone else in this league is seeing it. So I can see them, huffing and puffing along for quite a long time until it's almost too late. Whereas with Köln, it's such a different situation because they have done everything right. It's so weird because last season they were doing so well, and it's almost like they made one transfer to sell Modeste and everything is just fallen apart for them. They were shocking in the Europa League. And I think considering where Köln was there a few years ago, they were always such a chaotic club. And right now, I'm worried that they can fall back into this kind of pattern and become like that again. And then it would be very difficult to get themselves out of this situation. But it's two situations, very difficult to compare, but that could lead to completely two different scenarios in terms of what's happening to the head coach.
Yeah, very much so. But guys, I feel we've talked negatively enough. Let's talk about positive things that have been happening in the Bundesliga recently, and let's talk about Schalke. They've been on a bit of a run at the moment. Last 3 games, may I say, out of 9 points, they've picked up 7, and this week they managed to beat Mainz 2-0 in the Friday night game. Did we slightly underestimate Tedesco, Chris? I mean, he's obviously made quite the leap. He didn't have many games under his belt in dry Bundesliga, but he's jumped up to Bundesliga, and he's doing okay at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I think I famously said he would be sacked by match day 5. So that's me now looking a fool. We're on match day 9. And they're playing some good football. They're in 5th slot. And they're on the rise. And I think Hoffenheim will be looking down their necks nervously. I certainly didn't expect Schalke to be up where they were, and you can only praise them for acting the way they did. And they had the big game on Friday, which also sets the tone for the rest of the weekend. And they came out of a good win by Mainz, who are also have shocked me a little bit as well. I really did expect where Cologne and Bremen are at the moment. I expected that would be Mainz and Augsburg rooted to those bottom two slots, and then maybe one of four for 16th place. So Mainz have surprised me, but Schalke most definitely have surprised me. And they're playing really good football as well. I think that's what a lot of people are a little surprised about. Maybe we were blinkered because of the start they had last season, which was just so horrendous a start until they got that big win. But I think it's really worked for them. On occasion, it's this one pivot that they're playing, the defensive midfielder that's feeding the four midfielders. And, Bergstaller scored again, our man. Mm-hmm. I just got a lot of good things to say about them at the moment. And, the likes of Koke, although he's not been playing as much as he could have done, he's not getting a start at the moment. So it shows, as neither is Bentaleb. So it shows the level of competition within that squad. And I think at the moment, this is maybe a little bit like Hoffenheim. They're the parts are, the parts are greater than the sum. Is that the correct saying for it? That if you look at the players individually, you may not expect them to be where they are, but at the moment, they're a good team unit. And we saw last season with Freiburg and with Cologne that if you've got a good team unit, you can do really well in this league. So to answer your question, yes, I think we did underestimate Schalke. And I'm certainly going to be looking forward to the derby match when that comes, because I think it's going to be two teams at a similar sort of level as we speak at this moment.
Yeah, that'll be very exciting. It always is, isn't it? Manu, let's talk about one of those parts that Chris mentioned in Leon Goretzka. He really is quite the asset for them, and one of the real rising stars in German football at the moment.
Yeah, Leon Goretzka is great. He scored a fantastic goal this weekend, and he's maybe one of the reasons why Schalke are doing as well. Of course, Burgstaller, Chris mentioned him. He's scoring again, and it's hard to believe that there's some people out there who thought he was a bad signing for the club. He's been phenomenal. He's been consistent ever since he joined the team. He's a great striker. But Goretzka, for me, he's the standout in the squad, and he's this sort of player that really makes a difference. He's been compared to all sorts of players. I think it was Dave Hendricks who compared him to Stefan Effenberg, and although he doesn't have those antics, it's his presence on the field is very similar. He's just a powerful forward who can score very good goals. I mean, he was very good at the Confederations Cup for Germany. He's been fantastic this season, and I think he's a star in the making. He's still so young, but he shows so much leadership, and I think that really gets us to that next topic, isn't it? Are Schalke going to be able to keep him?
Well, Chris, we'll put that question to you. Do you think they'd be able to keep him long term? Do you think they need to finish in the likes of the Champions League to be able to sway him, to decide to stay in the summer? Because I'm sure, especially if he's taken to the World Cup and he has a good tournament on top of having a good league season, many people are going to come and knocking.
Yeah, I think we have to remember that Schalke have traditionally, over the last few seasons, been one of those top four clubs that routinely makes the Champions League or at least the European places. And because of a bad season last season, that's not happened. So, yes, I do think they need to offer the likes of Goretzka and Max Meyer as well. And some way Burgstaller and Koke and Kopenjanka, they all need to be playing European football. So if Schalke can't offer them that, I don't know if the likes of Goretzka are going to be able to take another season out of Europe, especially if, he's been consistently linked to clubs like Bayern. He's been linked to teams in the Premier League as well. Jurgen Klopp's keeping a good eye on him. If you go by the English press at the moment, Manchester City is supposed to have some sort of sniffing interest as well. So he is attracting those sorts of larger teams. Now, whether he wants to move outside of the Bundesliga, whether he thinks he's ready to do that. He's only 22, but Sané's made the jump quite well to another league. I think it's essential that if Schalke have any ambitions of getting back into that top four, cementing themselves in that sort of place, they need to be able to keep hold of the talent or adequately. And I don't know if you can find someone like Leon Goretzka who you can replace as quickly. So it's going to be hard for them, especially if he has a good World Cup. That can be the catalyst for many a team to come in. And then you're going to start saying, oh, he's currently valued around about 23, 25 million euros. If someone comes in and offers you 35, 40, are Schalke going to turn that down?
He's a free agent, Chris. He's a free agent.
He's a free agent. Okay, so that's even worse for Schalke. Of course, he's going to be out of contract, isn't he? It's going to be the 30. Well, he's out of contract at the end of the season. So, he. I'm going to see it's going to be real unlikely that he will stay unless they can offer him Champions League football. Depends how happy he is.
Yeah.
He might be very happy. He might not want to make that jump so soon, because if he makes that jump and it doesn't work, he's 22 years old and he goes to a club in England or Spain or even to a higher club in Germany and he sort of falls flat. That's him a little bit ruined. Maybe it might be best for him to wait a season or two to a little bit more development, just as he's hitting the very bottom of his prime, or the very start of his prime, so around about 24, 25, and then he can make a move and have a massive impact. So it's going to be difficult. I completely forgot he's out of contract. So it's going to be really difficult for Schalke to keep hold of him. But I think maybe if they can, they've got a good chance of cementing themselves in that top four place.
Yeah, they offered him a contract. He's actually spoken this week that he hasn't made up his mind yet what he's going to do at the end of the season. There was, of course, talk last summer that Bayern interested in signing him and that they haven't done like a pre-contract kind of deal, which is, of course, they couldn't have. But we all know that these kind of things happen. But apparently he said, quite outspoken, he said that he hasn't made up his mind, which is actually good news for Schalke. Schalke have offered him a new deal worth 10 million euros a season, which would catapult him into that top category of Bundesliga players. It would make him the highest paid Schalke player in history. The new deal is set to have an exit clause in the region of 70 million euros. So they're doing that so that basically they're giving him a way out, even by signing a new contract, which makes sense, I guess. But I think this points really to another thing too. We've spoken so much this year, or this season, about the quality of the league and the distribution of stars. And I think, Schalke should do whatever it takes to keep him, because, we need to move towards having more Bundesliga sides hanging on to their biggest players. Leipzig are doing it, of course. To a certain extent, they didn't have an option with Keita because of the exit clause, so they had to take the deal that Liverpool offered them for next year. But Leipzig said now that they're not going to sell any of the other top stars if they don't have to. Bayern, of course, they never do. Dortmund, the Dembele situation, but they are most of the time they were able to hang out to Aubameyang, for example. More clubs need to be able to say no. And I think Schalke needs to be the next club that falls into that category if the Bundesliga doesn't want to descend into just becoming a farmers league, farm team league for the other European leagues. Teams need to be able to resist and say no. Someone like Leon Goretzka is a face, people in Gelsenkirchen identify with him, and it'd be such good news for Schalke to hang on to him. Not just for Schalke, but for the entire league. It would send a really positive message. And I think I have my fingers crossed that Christian Heidel, Christian Heidel as a sporting director, he done wonderful things at Mainz. If anyone can get this job done, it would be him, right?
Yeah, I think it would. And, you're quite right. He's got the pedigree of doing it before. So you would hope, and I'm completely in agreement with you, if Schalke have any ambition of wanting to be back at the European top table, they need to keep hold of the likes of Leon Goretzka. So we will just have to wait and see. I think he may go, though. I think he may be tempted by the English pound or the Spanish euro. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, Barcelona is one of the sides apparently interested, and it's hard to say no to Barca. as Dortmund found out the hard way.
Yes, it's certainly hard to turn down those two big Spanish clubs when they come in knocking, as all the fans of the other teams around Europe and the world all too well know. But just one last thing before we move away from Schalke and how well they've been doing. Manu, we talked about how Benedict Höwedes, when he was transferred away or strangely left the club, that we really anticipated things weren't going to go well for Tedesco. But, I mean, they seem to be fairly strong at the back, even without him. Is that as big a surprise as ever for you? Yeah,
I mean, what can I say? We were pretty wrong about Tedesco this far. He has been doing really well with that back line with Naldo, and I think it's interesting that he has decided to play Stambouli as a center back, and it's something that has worked out very well for him. So, he's basically showing that he knows a thing or two. Interesting too that Höwedes is actually not doing that well in Italy. So, maybe there was something about that too. But yeah, I think, unless something really massively goes wrong for Tedesco, I think he's proven a lot of critics wrong, and I wouldn't be too surprised if he manages to even break into that top four. I know that Constantine has claimed that they could finish second. I think that's a step way ahead of them. I don't think that's going to happen, but they have looked very good this early on in the season, and the league table is so tight that a lot of things can go well for them. But defensively, I thought he's doing a lot of things very right, and that back three is looking quite solid without Höwedes.
Yeah, and I think, as Chris mentioned, when they do play the derby, that will be as lively as ever and quite interesting. But that's not until the 25th of November. The 3 games that they've got before that sees them playing a 14th, 15th and 16th in Wolfsburg, Freiburg and Hamburg. So, another few wins or draws in those games could really put them in good stead going into the winter break, I feel. I almost feel like we should go back to Manu, but we're not going to let him, I think. Chris, let's talk about Bayer Leverkusen. They can't possibly get, into the Champions League, can they? I mean, we said at the start of the season, didn't we, that, we laughed at Manu at the idea that they would be title challengers, but a 5-1 victory over Borussia Mönchengladbach after being 1-0 down is a hell of a statement, and maybe things are turning for them.
Well, yeah, I mean, Manu said he thought they could be up there challenging for the title. I didn't think they would be. They sort of coughed and spluttered early on, but now they're storming up the table. They're currently sitting in 9th, and, they're only a couple of points outside the European places. They've had a fantastic win of this last match day 9, 5-1 against, John won't like this, but the whipping boys at the minute. Gladbach, who are taking a hammering, letting considerable goals over a couple of games. But yeah, Leverkusen are doing exceptionally well. And I'm really pleased to see the young guy, Kai Havertz, is just so good at the moment. He assisted for the opening 3 goals. He's everywhere. And you've got to remember, he's only a young lad. I mean, he's 18 years old. And he is probably one of the most exciting attacking midfielders in the league, and probably one of the most exciting in Europe at the moment for his age. And the likes of Julian Brandt as well have come up, this season. I think Leverkusen, a little like Schalke last season, just had a really bad time, and now, with a change of personnel and a change of philosophy in the way they're playing football, they've got something going on there, and they managed to keep hold of a few players. We didn't know that. Would they keep hold of Tar in the summer? They did, and he looks a little bit more composed than he did last season. Remember when he played against Cologne, he was out-muscled in the air. A couple of times he was also out-muscled in this game. Last season as well, by Gladbach, who was bullied, and I haven't seen that happen this season so far. They've got a good double, that they play the 4-2-3-1. So there's two central defensive midfielders in Baumgartlinger and Bender are playing excellently. There's a real good buzz at Leverkusen at the moment. I didn't think they'd have it because they lost. Hernandez, Chicharito went. I thought that would be really, really bad for them. But another team that have got a real good team ethos that seems to be flowing throughout the club, and you can only praise the management for that and the staff within the club. And yeah, they are looking like they're going to make that climb up. And I sort of thought you would see a familiar sort of ring to the table, so the likes of Dortmund and Bayern and Schalke and Leverkusen. And I didn't know where Leipzig and Hoffenheim would fit in, but Schalke are on the way back, and it looks like Leverkusen are coming straight back up there as well. So we could see a real good fight if we're looking for 6 teams all battling for 4 Champions League places. I think it'd have a massive impact for next season's European competition. This season has been a bit poor European-wise in the Champions League and the Europa League for Bundesliga sides. I think a real strong 6 in Europe would do excellent for the coefficiency points. And I'm starting to see that sort of look like what's going to happen for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about this game in particular, it was only the second time that Leverkusen have ever scored 5 goals in one half in their entire history. And if we look at Borussia Mönchengladbach, who were on the receiving end of 5 goals, it was the first time in the turn of the century they've actually done so at home. And Manu, we need to talk a little bit about Gladbach and just how shambolic they were in that second half. Hecking got it completely wrong, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I mean, this is not the first time this has happened to them this season. I mean, they had a similar result against Dortmund, and I'm not sure why exactly that is. When you look at their backline, and Ginter and Vestergaard are good center backs, Zakaria is a very good midfielder who should be able to keep the shop close, and they have a very good goalkeeper. So it's a result that makes not that much sense. But they were just, Leverkusen outran them. It was 106 kilometers run by Gladbach, 117 kilometers run by Leverkusen. And Leverkusen outran them, but also outpaced them. Every time Leverkusen got the ball, they were just able to really quickly go into the gegenpressing, really quickly switch over and hit Gladbach so hard. And that is for me a sign that Gladbach are standing that's too high up there in the line. Defensively, they're not coordinated really well, and that is a tactical problem, which means it's a coaching problem. And that is definitely on Hacking and the way he set up his side, because if you have 2 results like that against teams that just, play that kind of counter football, that's usually a sign that you have a bit of a mess in your hand tactically, and I think that's definitely what's going on at Gladbach right now. But maybe a quick one about Leverkusen, Bryce. I think losing Chicharito was a big one for them, but when you look at who they brought in, I think bringing in Sven Bender to shore up that defensive line that allows them to play that kind of disciplined football and bring in the amount of running that they do. Because Sven and Lars Bender are probably the players that cover the field the most of any players you will ever see. They're very, very hard-working players. They got 2 of them. They're basically identical twins, right? And I actually think that Alario, the Argentine that they brought in to replace Hernandez, is actually a better player. He's a better striker, and he allows the young guns, Havertz, Volland, Bailey, those really quick attacking midfielders. He's sort of like an anchor for them. And I actually think that side is better than last season's. I mean, we all expected that Brandt would be gone, Havertz could be gone, Tar could be gone, and all of that didn't happen, and they actually managed to not reach the Champions League or the Europa League and actually improve on their side. And it's slowly but surely it's showing. Alario came in late and took some time to adapt, but he's arrived now. Same with Sven Bender. He's a new arrival, of course. So they had to make some change and adapt a little bit, but it's slowly but surely it's showing.
Well, let's talk about Bender's previous side in Dortmund. Then another rather odd and unexpected result after being 2-0 up. Eintracht Frankfurt managed to draw it back in the space of 4 minutes to 2-2. Chris, I know that you've been limited to what you can see over the weekend due to the lack of internet, but what did you make of this result? A bit of a shock. Some people saying that Bosk has been found out. What would you have to say about that?
I don't know if he's being found out as such. We've said a few times that if you're going to play the way that Peter Bosz wants to play, you're going to lose a couple or you're going to drop a couple of points occasionally. They've had a pretty poor run in Europe. I think that early season vitality that we saw throughout the squad has taken a bit of a battering at Tottenham. It's also taken a bit of a battering against Real Madrid. And I think they're a little low on confidence at the moment. And that's showing where, at the moment, you go 2-0 up after, 57 minutes, and then they leak a goal only a few minutes later, and then 4 minutes after that, they leak the second goal. That is a pure confidence thing. Once you are flying high, like they were, if you think back earlier on in the season when they were smashing goals away for fun, it's how you respond when the chips are down. And Sahin is a great player. I think he's suffering from a little bit of confidence. One person who isn't, we're going to look at positives. Let's look at Maximin and Philip from a Dortmund's positive. I thought he was good again, and he's getting his goal. Aubameyang's top of the scoring chart still. There's a lot to be happy with, but there's just an incidence of confidence now, and we saw that in what was a pretty disappointing fixture away in Cyprus. There's no way to dress that up. It was a pretty awful result. So I think they're in a real rut of confidence, and it'll affect them. I would like, if I was Magdeburg's head coach, I don't think you could be facing the Pokal champions at a better time than at the moment. I think a couple of weeks prior, and Magdeburg will be getting the floor wiped with them on it's going to be Tuesday night, isn't it? But now I think they've got a real chance of maybe causing a little upset or taking it the distance.
Yeah, I would go along with that, Chris. I think Magdeburg is going to be a tough challenge for them because it's Dortmund have something to prove. Of course, they have to kind of show that the results were a little bit of an accident, but I see also that Aubameyang, he has been a little bit ineffective, even more ineffective than he has been before. Pulisic was a bit ineffective. I thought he was poor. Maybe he's the realization of that World Cup defeat, not reaching the World Cup is kind of slightly sinking in at the moment for him. And I think Magdeburg, they're second in Liga 3. They're riding a real wave of confidence right now, and that's the kind of side that can hurt a big team. I expected that Dortmund will win this game 2-0, which is actually quite a tight result when you consider the gulf of quality between the two teams. But I quite agree. I think this is going to be a difficult fixture for Dortmund. And I mean, as Michael Zorc said to the press yesterday, the only objective in Magdeburg is to win. That basically, says it right there. But to maybe go back to Bosz, I don't think he has been found out yet. We remember when he was hired in that long press conference he gave at the Signal Iduna Park, and he said, look, this is going to be a difficult system to play. It will take time. And I think they flew early on this season, and they were so impressive, but they were also not playing teams that were really challenging them. Niko Kovac is one of the best tactical coaches in the Bundesliga, and he just realized that there were still weaknesses in Bosz's system, and he explored them. And I think, with the side still trying to get used to playing the system and all the injuries in the back, I think it was just a matter of time for these poor results to happen. So I think, the Champions League at this point, that's done and over with, John. You were right if you're listening. But I think in the league, it's a little stumble, but nothing else. I think, when they're playing against teams that are not as tactically astute or, as good as the likes of Leipzig, I think they will just collect the points and keep collecting points and just get on with it. I think it's just a little bit of a tight line, a little stumble that was bound to happen with the new system.
Yeah, I'm sure that when it comes to the weekend and the league resumes, that they'll be happy to be facing Hanover, who actually just picked up their first win in 3, rather than taking on either the two big teams around them in RB Leipzig and Bayern Munich, who will face at the weekend, but also face during the week in the Pokal. How often does this happen? It seems to happen quite a bit, doesn't it? Two teams will play each other in successive days. But midweek, we'll talk about the Pokal game first. It's in Leipzig. Chris, how seriously do you think both sides will take this? I mean, obviously, the competition is taken fairly seriously in Germany, but obviously when they're taking on each other in a few days, will they have an eye on the league more so than the cup?
That's a good question, Bryce. I mean, they're battling it out, aren't they? They're only split by 1 point in the league as it stands, Bayern a second, Leipzig a third. If Leipzig have any ambitions of becoming a title-winning side, they need to get experience in winning competitions. So the Pokal offers an exceptional way of them gaining that experience. You're going all the way, the big day out. It's a big weekend out as there in May in Berlin. It's a fantastic, I'm going to say circus in the nicest way. The pre-match and in the pre-week, the build-up in the city, the way it's distributed on television, the way the city fills up, the weather's normally cracking. It's just an old area that they need to be in, I think. And if they can get experience in a final as that, then they could probably build off that. But saying that, they're going to play Bayern a couple of days later in the league. They're still in the Champions League, and they're starting to do well in the Champions League now. So it's a catch-22 situation. Do they throw everything into this competition as well as the Bundesliga and as well as the Champions League? And they've not got the greatest squad depth for talent, so if they have one or two players missing, it does show occasionally. It's going to be interesting to see. The flip side of that, it's another one for Bayern. They haven't won it. Now, they didn't win it last season. They went out in their own back garden against Dortmund after being ahead at half-time. So they may want to be able to make a statement as well. New manager, there's some players on the way out, might just want to win it for the last time. So I think that we will see a strong side from both. I think the strongest side, though, will be for the weekend's game. But I can't see this being a reserve match with reserve style players or squad fringe players playing in it. I think we're going to see two really good competitive fixtures in 2 days, and I think this is a Pokal match to watch. If anybody's thinking, what am I going to watch over this week, or it'll be tonight or the night after as you listen to this, it's the one to watch for me for this, definitely for the Pokal. And who wins, and that will take some confidence into the weekend. So there's a melting pot of scenarios for this fixture. It's going to be a big week for both sides.
It's almost like a home and away. So quick in succession. We were, of course, at this game, right, Chris, in May, and what a fantastic atmosphere on two fantastic teams. And I had to write the preview for this for Fußballstadt.com, and I was very unsure on which way this could go. I predicted that, it's unpredictable and that Bayern would maybe win it in extra time because they're a bit more experienced in that kind of scenario. But it's going to be very tight. Either side could take it. I think they're both going to take both fixtures very serious. No one wants to go out this early in the cup. It's very seldom that two big teams meet each other this early in this competition. This is only the second round. So, neither one wants to be out in the second round of the cup. So they're going to take that all away, and then they're going to face each other in, a game that is a must win for both too, if they want to stay, in touching distance to Borussia Dortmund on top of the table. This is fantastic for German football because you get to see those two sides playing each other in such key games. And I think, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, Chris, but this game is basically the best news for Borussia Dortmund because those two teams are now going to slug it out over 180 minutes, whereas Dortmund has an easy fixture against Magdeburg, an easy fixture next weekend, and they can basically kind of put up their feet a little bit and see these two teams crashing each other, more or less, in 180 minutes that are going to be very tough, maybe more because it could go into extra time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dortmund could be the big winners, but we've seen, not just this season, but last season as well, and probably the season before that when you expect Borussia Dortmund to take full advantage of a situation, unfortunately, sometimes they fail to grasp that. So I think if they get any sort of complacency come in, they need to just look after their own games. But I'm sure they'll be really happy that these two are playing each other twice within such a short space. And, you know, if they have a real good slog out midweek in the Pokal, it could be almost a war of attrition on the weekend fixture where it ends as a draw. And then if Dortmund can win, then they will be the big winners, and they will pull out a little bit of a gap from the pair of them, which is exactly what they want, because now, you know, it is in essence a three-way tie for first place at the moment. There's just 1 point in between first and third. So, you know, a bad week for either side, and you could see a complete reverse order in the table. But yeah, I'll go along with you there that Dortmund will have a little smile. It's just whether they can take full advantage of that situation. And watching them of late, you know, you really would have thought they would have taken advantage in Cyprus, and they didn't. So it could be whoever wins this midweek fixture goes into Saturday's game on a high and maybe wins that, and then they're the big winners of the weekend. So it's going to be a close one to keep an eye on, not just for the cup competition, but also for the fallout it has in the weekend's games.
Yeah, usually this early on in the cup, there isn't big fixtures like this, but this is so different this year. And we have to keep in mind Bayern are without another injury, this time to Thomas Müller, so a little bit depleted. There isn't that many options for them up front, so they can't really rotate that much anymore.
I think even if you look at the weekend or the weeks coming up for Dortmund and Bayern, and we look even beyond that, I mean, obviously, yes, these two teams will be out crushing each other midweek and then at the weekend while Dortmund are away to Hanover. But even look beyond that, you've got the Champions League and you've got Dortmund at home midweek to Apple Nicosia. You're going to have Bayern away to Celtic, which, yes, I'm sure they'll win that, but that's an away game and a tough game. They'll kind of have to battle it out. And then the two teams face each other in Dortmund on the 4th, you know, so things are kind of edging towards Dortmund in the next few weeks. I'm sure that they're kind of happy with how the run-in up to the international break is going to pan out.
Well, maybe, Bryce, I think this is the moment of truth for Jupp Heynckes, because, you know, he had 3 relatively easy fixtures to take right after he took over the side, and now he's having 2 very tough fixtures and a tough away game, and you know, facing Celtic at home is a different proposition than going to play there. It's a very difficult stadium to play at. And then Dortmund. I think this is really, has Heynckes turned it around for Bayern, or is this been just, you know, them playing against 3 weak sides? And they have to do this without Ribéry and Müller and without Neuer. And those are 3 big faces that are basically missing from the side. So I think these next November 5th is the Dortmund game. I think from now to November 5th, we'll know quite a bit of how Jupp Heynckes will go on with Bayern. It's the weeks of truth coming up for them, for sure.
Yeah, November 4th, that one is 5:30 UK time. Very exciting, that late Saturday game. But guys, I think that more or less does it for us this week. Chris, what have you got going on this week, apart from tons of work by the sounds of it the rest of tonight? Have you got anything you'd like to draw people's attention to?
At the minute, I am massively busy with extra work. So not just writing, video production, editing, etc. So I'm unfortunately having to take a little bit of a back seat. However, when the Champions League returns, I should be, fingers crossed, at Celtic Park for Bayern's visit, and then the night after at Anfield for Maribor's visit to Liverpool. So there should be plenty going on footballstat.com, as in match reports wise and minute reporting. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
Very exciting. Good work and good luck with all that workload. Manu, what have you got coming up, and what would you like to draw people's attention to? You must be bored without all this European football.
Well, Chris says it. First of all, you can follow me at Manuel Veth. But yeah, it's a bit of a, we have the 2 cup games. The Leipzig game, first and foremost, the preview is out. I just actually posted it just before this podcast. I'm working on a Fußballstadt special on Magdeburg, sort of introducing the club for the many Dortmund supporters that follow us. So that will be out too. It is, by the time this podcast will come out, actually. But it's a bit of a quiet week, other than that, because no European football. That said, European football is back in full force. So, I'm starting the planning, the scheduling for all the previews. We have a couple of new writers that have joined us in the last couple of weeks. So we'll have more previews by more different writers, which is exciting. So yeah, next week is a big week. This week is Pokal and Bayern Leipzig on Saturday. So look out for those articles and previews coming out on those games.
And, well, I suppose I'd like to draw people's attention to the Golazo podcast, the Mexican football podcast, which Manu and I just recorded earlier, which also covers a bit of MLS for a change. But there's, well, you said that it's a little bit quiet away from the European front. I suppose there's some big Mexican games coming up this weekend, Copa MX as well, so people can tune into them. I'm sure there'll be articles and whatnot on Football Grads. If you want to go over to Twitter at Football Live, you'll be able to get all the updates on there. I've been your host, Bryce Dunn. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at Bryce Dunn 11. Apart from that, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'd love you to go over to iTunes and give us some comments or a positive review. That would go a long way for us. But that more or less does it. Enjoy the midweek games, and we'll be back very soon to talk everything German football. Auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's sein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.